Welcome to Four Questions. Four Questions is proudly brought to you by Blackmore 4, where we have the opportunity to engage in meaningful conversation and debate with inspirational leaders across various industries. Now, we've changed things up a little bit with our format for 2022, in that the final and fourth question will be a random bingo buzz question selected from this box. Really excited about that. Today, we are joined by a professional with over 2 decades of experience in the field of business psychology and currently the head of leadership assessment at Cappfinity. Carla is a recognized leader herself with a wealth of experience, not just around leadership, but various facets of business psychology, including change management, which is our topic today. So Carla Holden, it's an absolute honor to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be here. Thanks very much for that lovely introduction.
It's only my pleasure. And Carla, I know we were talking offline, but I just absolutely love the conversations that you have. You've really sort of set yourself apart as a thought leader. So I'm dying to dig into that brain of yours and just to hear your opinions. You ready?
Wonderful. Yes, I am. Yes, I'm ready.
Brilliant. Let's go. Question 1 goes like this. Carla, what changes are you currently having to lead and what's driving those changes?
Well, yes, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, as you said, I'm very much in the world of consultancy like yourself, and I work for Cappfinity. And so, you know, we're in the lucky position right now of being in a sort of growth market for what we do. We deliver and design assessment for right across the employee life cycle, and I'm part of the team that looks at leaders in particular, and so there's a lot of demand for that at the moment. And what we're doing at Cappfinity seems to be hitting sort of the right notes with the clients we work with and with other organisations. So we're growing, and I guess one of the challenges, one of the changes is for me is around, you know, my particular area of expertise being leadership assessment, which in the past, you know, has been very kind of bespoke, very concierge, very one-to-one, and you know, kind of very time and labour intensive, which is absolutely as it should be, because we're supporting our clients in, you know, making really important decisions about who's going to lead parts of the business or the business in its entirety. That's high risk, so it needs to be done well. But at the same time, how do you do it at scale? How do you do it when you're looking across large organisations to spot leadership potential and talent? So that's the kind of growth of and scale of the business that's coming into my part of Cappfinity, but also, you know, just the scale of us as a team. So how does that how do we move from a small boutique to more productized and responsive to larger numbers without reducing the quality of what we do? So that's a big change that we need to be thinking about. Part of the solution to that for me is technology, you know, and using technology really cleverly. And I think the pandemic has made us all do that anyway. You know, we all use things like this sort of platform, video calling. We use sort of online methods of communication a lot more than perhaps we did before, and people are more comfortable with that right up to senior levels in organisations. So the kind of people that we work with who perhaps used to be, you know, by dint of the fact that they are going into leadership roles, they're experienced professionals, they tend to be older, they might have been a bit more technophobic, you know, even 2 years ago.
Traditional, yeah.
Exactly. And now that's not so much of a barrier anymore. So we can do things more cleverly. We can do a lot more in terms of using that technology to deliver assessment and feedback and insight, both to our clients and I've got to get my tech savvy up, personally, obviously, to I feel like I'm for my age and stage, I'm pretty good anyway, but I've just got to keep on the ball with that. So that's my personal challenge, and lean on the people within Cappfinity who are absolutely, sort of experts in that, and we have a lot around us. And then, obviously my team as well. I've got to make sure that the team and the rest of my sort of stakeholders understand how we need to use that technology. So I think this
moving parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Growth and scalability are, the big ones. And then what we've done recently within my part of Cappfinity is we've come together with another team of colleagues who are experts in development, and I know this kind of shades into your world at Blackmore, and so what we're looking to do is make something that makes sense to our clients, so they're not just buying assessment off the shelf in a package and then they're sort of going to somebody else to then deal with the implications of that assessment. We want to have a sort of smooth and full service offer, and so we've come together internally to make a bigger team that can help clients with the full life cycle of a leader's, gaining insight into their profile and their impact, and then saying, well, how do I make it better? How do I leverage my strengths? How do I do what I need to do? And that has meant an internal merger, which brings with it those challenges of change management. So people's roles have changed slightly. People are reporting into different people, and it's happening everywhere, I know, and people are always dealing with this in their working life, because we need to be agile and we need to respond to the market, so we internally restructure. And I find that the emotional element of that is surprisingly strong. The fact that people like perhaps the job title that they had before even, and felt comfortable with that, and now they've got to change and think differently, and how they talk to clients has got to be different. So I've been involved very much in supporting people on an individual level emotionally to accept the differences and go through the change curve, which is an old idea, but it doesn't go out of style. I think the change curve is something, that it actually, we see in action when we work in a changing sort of environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So Carla, I mean, just a comment on that. You're absolutely right. There's so many different moving parts when it comes to change. I mean, you're not just dealing with your markets. I mean, at Blackmore 4, we're more a bespoke, more niche, where, as I'm hearing it, Cappfinity is coming up with those solutions at scale, but still giving support to the client. So many moving parts. And I think what maybe facilitates change in this circumstance is, as you aptly noted, people are developing a growing appetite to technology because we've been thrust into it. But I want to lead into our second question. I mean, that's the great part of change, but sometimes there's a lot of obstacles too. So question 2 is, what are the biggest obstacles getting in the way of leading change effectively? Perhaps in your particular experience right now, as you've unpacked, and also just generally, what obstacles have you identified generally?
Yeah, I think there's the real old chestnuts, which I already started to talk about, which is the idea that people are people, and we haven't evolved as fast as the world around us has evolved. We still have the same emotional makeup that we did, maybe 10,000 years ago when we started to walk upright or whatever.
You're absolutely right.
I often find this, that and there's been a lot written and said about this, about how the digital world is is really not our the way that how fast it moves is not at the natural pace that the human adaptation moves. And I think the same can be said for change in organisations, because we're constantly asking people to think about things slightly differently, as to maybe change their role, as I said, to move about within the organisation and pay attention to different things. That doesn't necessarily align with how fast the human brain and the human emotions actually adapt themselves. And I mean, having had a long career, like you had said at the beginning, I do remember going back to things, you know, times when the pace of change was slower. And I think, you know, we all say this is a truism, but I believe, in my experience, things were, you know, did move slower perhaps in the old days. And I mean, I came out of large public sector organisations. By nature, they were not agile. But I think even they are different now, and even the large organisations that we work with tend to have small pockets where things move very quickly, and the way that each part of the business interacts with each other changes quickly. And how do humans cope with that? I think that's the big obstacle. It really is. And paying attention as a leader to, and being compassionate as a leader to the fact that people might struggle and they might question things, and that clarity as to why we're doing it, what we're doing in the first place, and why we're doing it, can never be overdone. So saying that message again and again until people understand it, and then can align themselves to it or not. If they don't feel aligned to it, then helping them to see what their options are, really, I guess. So if they're not comfortable with where their situation, you know, their environment is moving, do they want, you know, maybe they want to do something else, go somewhere else, and, you know, helping them with that, and not trying to persuade them otherwise, I think, you know, too much.
Gosh, that's so interesting, Carla, because I'm reading, I know this is going to sound arbitrary for a moment, but I'm reading a very, very fascinating book. It's called Why We Eat Too Much by Dr. I cannot recall his name at the moment, but he is obviously, you know, a physician, and he takes that from a historical perspective.
Evolutionary, yeah.
If we look at evolutionary sort of our habits today in terms of our eating is informed by what we did thousands of years ago.
Yes.
And you've given me such a fresh perspective, because I've just thought for a moment, you know, if we look at sort of caveman times, it would have served their purposes to always be changing locations or types. For evolutionary purposes, they probably had to sort of stay the same. So this is something so deep-seated within us as Homo sapiens, in that that's why there's this uncomfortability and this little bit of resistance, or a lot of resistance sometimes to change. So yeah, thanks for that. You've made.
And I think when it comes, another thing I've reflected on, you know, in the terms of forming a new team or forming, you know, new units in a business, is that trust is so important. It's a self-evident truth that we need to trust our colleagues, and clients need to trust us as well. And trust, again, is one of those things that back in the day when we were all hunter-gatherers or whatever, we would know our little family or extended family and be able to trust each other. And there was, and so if you form a new group, you need to build that trust, and that again is the work of a leader to an extent, to facilitate how do I get people to work together collaboratively, find out each other's strengths and each other's areas where they need support, and how do I then facilitate trust building so that people are, you know, then going to the right people at the right time for the help they need. So, you know, it's all comes down, I think, it often comes down to the people side. The tech side, again, it, you know, is a challenge. Like I said, you know, I personally have that on my list as, you know, keeping up with what's possible in terms of technology. But we're all becoming more comfortable with that. So, you know, I guess it's one of the things that just, you know, totally kind of I think a lot of organisations, regardless of their age and stage, deal with is legacy technology. So obviously you've invested a lot of money in technology in the past. You're not willing to go, let's get rid of that and get something new. And so you end up with lots of different bits of kit that don't necessarily fit together very well. So, you know, that's a big issue for another type of change management that I think lots of places are dealing with now.
Sure, fascinating stuff, Carla. Right, let's head into question 3. What, in your opinion, are the key measures of successfully leading change?
Yeah, I mean, I was reflecting on this. Obviously, I did my homework and did look at the questions before this session. So I was reflecting on this question and thinking, change success measures in the old days, again, going back to the old, you might think, well, we're going to do a change and it's going to be start here and it's going to finish here. And after we've done the change, we'll see how happy everybody is, perhaps how the numbers stack up in terms of the business, you know, have profits gone up, or, you know, general sort of good outcomes for in the bottom line, and how are clients happy if they stayed with us over this process of change. And that still is right. I think obviously you'd still want to measure engagement, and I particularly like the question, how well have we communicated with you during this change? Because I think if people can never get too much communication during periods of change, because ambiguity and the void of not knowing is filled with gossip, with misinformation. But so that I think still stands. But the other thing that I think is a measure which is really important to look at is our general change resilience and change readiness as an organisation. So that means that because change is never stops, it always goes, carries on, and things overlap, and I'm doing something to add on to what I've just achieved last year, and I'm going to make it even better this year, or what I did last quarter. So it's never going to be a point where you go, right, that's finished and now are we all happy?
The linear process done. Tick.
So yeah, so obviously the business metrics, you want to keep an eye on those, of course, to see if anything has adversely affected those. But I would say the sort of change readiness is really important, and that goes right from the leadership team right down to people in the, you know, kind of in the delivery part of the organisation or at the coalface. So how do they feel about things changing around them? What kind of strengths do they have which allow them to just cope with it and do really well, and ask the right questions, and you know, sort of just generally remain effective? Because there are I think there are differences between individuals in how change ready and change resilient they are, but I think you can support and develop that in people who perhaps are a bit more reticent or
resistant.
Exactly.
Oh, so interesting. It's time for our bingo buzz question. Are you ready?
No, but go ahead anyway.
So we're shaking up the questions, as you can see. Carla has no idea what I'm going to ask her. I have no idea what I'm going to ask her. But this is exciting. We're going to pull it. I feel like I'm giving you a prize. I'm so excited. Okay, so the question goes like this. My goodness gracious. Oh, this is a controversial one, Carla. Does intelligence correlate to effective leadership?
It is controversial, you're absolutely right. And what do we mean by intelligence as well? So, you know, that's obviously me being my business psychologist background, because intelligence is not an easy concept to define. But the short answer is yes, I think there is an element of what we all might think of as intelligence, intellectual capability, which drives your potential to learn the skills required to be a leader, and also keeps you effective when you're in a leadership position, because you're able to condense ideas and look at trends, look at patterns, anticipate challenges. So, you know, from a business leadership perspective, intellectual capacity, if we want to break it down into analysis and problem solving, then, you know, that I think is something, it's something we certainly have in our model of leadership as something that we would look at when we're dealing with, when we're
Can I debate this a little bit? Let's just like tear this open. I'm not disagreeing with you, but if we look at leadership as being relational, surely that should have sort of more gravitas in terms of its impact on effective leadership. I mean, is it all capability or is it more relational?
But I think it's both. Well, I mean, capability, there's different types of capabilities. There's intellectual capability, there's relational capability, as you say. They're both important, but I think you know, a lot of times we feel uncomfortable saying that intellectual capability is important, and that was the question you asked me. We feel uncomfortable saying it because I think we know in our heart of hearts that it's a hard thing to become better at, isn't it? You know, you almost are playing with what nature gave you and what your privileged educational background sometimes gave you as well, you know, and that is a really hard
nutrition, so many different facets.
It's a really hard thing for society to address because not everyone gets an equal start in life, and so the way that they're, you know, perhaps their brain has been trained to sort of deal with things in a structured way or in a more kind of systematic way, hasn't been given a head start, and so some people have an advantage wherever that comes from. Unfortunately, there is, you know, we do know that there is a link between intellectual capability and successful leadership of businesses, you know, but the world isn't a meritocracy, so we do have a lot of we have a lot of chance to look at variations in that, you know, in senior leader teams, and see how it affects performance. And you know, there is a link, but all the other things are important too. So emotional, like you said, relational capability, emotional intelligence, they are, you know, as equally important, if not more important. So we always try to look at somebody's profile in the round holistically and say, if you've got things which are not as strong as your peers or as the benchmark would require, how do you mitigate that? Not forget it, don't bother being a leader. It's how do you, with a sense of self-awareness, think, this isn't my ball game, this isn't where I really come to shine, so what can I do to bring other people in who will, and I can then trust them to do that part for me, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, you know, leadership, sure, it's relational, but it's also leadership is a team effort. So why not leverage against the sort of the strengths of my peers as opposed to trying to be everything as one individual?
Exactly. And I think where leadership teams derail or individual leaders derail is when they fail to appreciate the full range of things that are required to be, you know, to lead successfully, and become narcissistic or self-regarding and thinking everything that I think, every decision I make is more important than the team. There's lots of political examples of that, which I won't go into, but
too many.
You know, where hubris has undone people. So yeah, absolutely. I think if, you know, we're not all going to be Einsteins, and therefore we can say, I need a second or third brain on this because I really want to get the best analysis in order to make the best decisions going forward. So
Carla, you did so well. My goodness, the spotlight. Yeah, really, really interesting conversation, interesting opinion, and I'm sure hotly debated in terms of, does intelligence correlate with leadership? But
absolutely, I'm not unaware that you know, you did the bingo buzz question, and I tried to answer it as honestly as I can in terms of what I know that the literature tells us. But I'm not unaware that it's a hard subject.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, even if going back to my studies at the moment with this book, but, I mean, if we look at our neighbors, what were they called? Oh, it fails me now. But in terms of the human race, we could be expected to be effective as mammals, because we live in a society where we've got rules and technology and whatnot. And the whole way in which that happened is because, hundreds of thousands of years ago, the advent of fire, in terms of being able to cook our food, which is a pre-digestive, meant that our digestive tract evolved to take in less energy, or to need less energy, and that was then diverted to the growth of the brain. So, I mean, this is also sort of a medical opinion. And that, of course, correlates to, to perceiving humans today as being sort of effective mammals, if we look at our neighboring mammals. So controversial, but I mean, true. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so we as humans have kind of been successful because of our intelligence, and that is, I think, physical. We're not going to look at a leader in terms of their physical strength right now, and I can't think of an example where you would. There might be, like, I don't know, rugby coach or something, but that's become so unimportant in our world now, in the world of the sort of developed world and business and organizations, that we don't even think about it anymore. And intellectual capacity is still right up there, up the top in terms of, but it doesn't mean that, as you say, that one single individual has to possess the outstanding strengths in every single area. And that's another thing that we've evolved to do really well, isn't it? Is collaborate. And that's another thing that slightly sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom, but not all. Octopuses are very good at it. So I understand.
Really? Fascinating.
I won't go into that one.
Thank you so much. Or we could do it offline. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure, digging deep and into your thoughts and your opinions. And I've really appreciated your conversation. And yeah, all the best with managing change in the business. And
thank you.
Luck.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for you asking me to come.
Excellent. Bye-bye.
Bye.